Hey guys, Coach the Board. We're going to be looking at 14.4. Okay, this is dealing with the quadratic formula. Okay, it's one of those things when you see it, it may be a little intimidating, but it's actually very easy to use once you can identify three separate terms, and then it's just substituting numbers in and punching it in the calculator. So let's dive into this. Here's our learning targets. I can solve a quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula. All right, and I can determine the best method for solving a quadratic equation. This is something that you need to be able to recognize, okay? First off, the quadratic formula is just an algebraic method for solving quadratic equations written in the standard form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a does not equal 0. That just means that this right here can't be a 0, because if it was, your equation would just be bx plus c. All right, so I'm going to erase that, but just wanted to discuss that. The word solution is interchangeable with three other words: zeros, roots, and x-intercepts. All four of these words right here mean the same exact thing. Okay, so anytime you see those words, you should just think of solution. All right, and like with the quadratic formula, we're going to be finding the solution, but those solutions are actually my x-intercepts. Okay, and you'll see more of that here in a second when we look at some examples. But you need to be able to recognize that all four of these words, and that is very, very important, all mean the same exact thing. Okay, now the quadratic formula itself, and pay attention to how I read this because it's very important. It's x equals the opposite of b. Notice how I did not say negative b. It's the opposite of b plus or minus, okay? You are actually going to be doing this twice. One time using plus and one time using minus. The square root of b squared minus 4ac. And people ask all the time, does the 4 ever change right here? The minus 4. No, that will always be in my equation. All right? And it's all over 2a, all being divided by 2a. Now, key things that I just talked about to recap. And I think if I write this, you may understand a little better. You're going to do x equals the opposite of b plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And you're also going to do x equals the opposite of b minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Now notice, up here where I had it in pink, how I do it once with a plus and once with a minus. That's going to give you your two solutions, or your two x-intercepts. Okay, we will end up being able to graph these functions just from the quadratic formula itself. Okay, we'll be able to find our two x-intercepts, find our vertex, and we can graph it. Okay, but that is very important, and you need to make sure you write this down. If I were you, I would actually write both of these down and make note of how one is a plus and one is a minus. So let's find our two solutions in this. And I went ahead and had the quadratic formula written up top. But to start these, you first need to be able to identify what A is, B, and C. All right? And in this one, A is just going to be 1, right? There's a 1 there. B is going to be -5. And C is going to be 6. All right, so that's every time you need to go ahead and you just need to write A equals, B equals, C equals. So you have that there to be able to reference. Okay? Now, I'm going to find my two solutions. And remember, I'm going to have one that has a plus, so I'll write it here. I have x equals the opposite of b plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And I'll also have x equals the opposite of b minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay? You have to recognize that you're doing it twice because you got to find two x-intercepts or two solutions. Now, we have our a, b, and c identified. We're gonna substitute our numbers in, and we're gonna get a solution here. Okay? And I have actually went ahead and I've used Desmos to determine these solutions, so I'll kind of be going quick with it as far as determining our solution. But just use your Desmos calculator, type it in exactly like how we write it out here, and that will tell you your solution. So, for this first one, x equals the opposite of b, and in this case, b is -5, so the opposite of -5 is 5, plus the square root of b squared, and b is -5 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 6, all over 2 times 1. Okay, now notice, and I'll highlight here, b was -5. Okay, I did the opposite of b here. The opposite of -5 is 5. I had b here and here. A was 1, so I put it in here and here. And C actually only has one spot where it will be going in. All right, and that is right there for C. Okay, I actually forgot to highlight that. All right, notice how I just substituted all those numbers in. And when I typed it in, that gave me 3. All right. So let's do our next part where we're using subtraction instead of addition. Okay, I have x equals. Everything is going to stay the same exact way. Except, and it's really easy with Desmos because I can just copy and paste my what I have used as an input onto the calculator. I can paste it on there and just change the addition to subtraction, and I've only had to type it really once. Okay, so I'm going to have 5 minus the square root of -5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6 over 2 times 1. Okay, and when I do that, it gave me the solution of 2. Okay, so my two x-intercepts in this instance, I will be crossing through the x-axis at 2 and 3. And after our next example, we're going to be graphing. But this example, its sole purpose was just to show you how to determine your two x-intercepts. And it's really not bad. It looks a little intimidating, but all you've got to do is identify these 3 terms over here. All right, you got to be able to identify those. Once you do, you're just substituting into this formula, and there you go, okay? But let's look at our next one. Let's slide to example 2 here. This one is a little different because I do have a number in front of x squared. But all that means is instead of, for A is not going to be 1, it will be 2. B is 4, and C is -7. All right? I'm going to substitute those numbers in. So I'll have x equals, the opposite of b is going to be -4 plus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 7. All over 2 times 2. All right, when you do that, x equals, it's actually a decimal, but it's okay, 1.12. All right, so I'll change my color here. Notice how I used the plus there. For my next part, everything's going to be the same, except I'm using a minus. The square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 7 over 2 times 2. And when I do that, x is negative 3.12. All right. Now, notice here, it's wanting us to graph it. Well, I have determined my two x-intercepts, right? I have to find my vertex. Okay, and the vertex, if you remember, is the opposite of b over 2a, which in this instance will be negative 4 over, that's going to give me my x, I'm sorry. Negative 4 over 2 times 2. All right, which is negative 4 over 4, which is negative 1. So in my vertex, the x value is 4. I now have to find the y. And I'm going to take this, negative 1, and to find my y, I'm just going to put negative 1 in here everywhere. Okay? Now, when I do that, it will give me, so let me write it out for you. For my y, it would be y equals, I'm going to put it into my original formula, 2 times negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1 minus 7. All right? And when you do that, that gives you negative 9. So my vertex is negative 1, negative 9. And you can find the vertex first, guys. You can find the vertex first and then find your x-intercepts. I just happen to find my x-intercepts first and then find my vertex. It really doesn't matter. But I'm going to graph this, and I'm going to start at my vertex. My vertex is negative 1, negative 9. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go left 1, down 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right there is my vertex. All right. And then I'll graph my two x-intercepts. If I go back, I had negative 3.12, which is very close right here to negative 3. And I had a positive 1.12, which is right here. Okay, and then I will just draw my U shape, and that's close enough. And that continues to go on and on forever, so draw your arrows. And that's all there is to it, guys. So use your formula. We'll kind of go back through this. Use your formula, all right, which is right here. Use your formula. Just make sure you can identify that you're doing a plus and a minus. Find your two x-intercepts. Use the vertex formula to find the vertex. Hello. And then you can graph. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let us know. Hope you guys are working hard, and we'll be in contact.